this lecture number 4 is visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in the last class, we were done with our lecture number 4. Okay, in lecture number 4, we actually start 3D structure. And before that, we were done with 2D structures, and as well as those 1D structure as well, line elements. Okay. And last time we also done with this. After that, we are going to see some 2D and as well as some 3D stresses as well. Okay, in the next lecture. So let me just quickly conclude this lecture again and revise this, and then we will start our lecture number 5. So if you remember last time in this lecture, we start with 3D structure and we solve some problems. I also assign you some and give some problem as an assignment. Okay, and we are also done with our in-lab assessment. And in this lecture, we also discuss some more topics like the local axis rotation. We talk about the global axis as well as the local axis, global axis XYZ, and the local axis that is 1, 2, 3. So global axis is for the structure, but for the element, for example, if I have this frame, so this could be the global axis, this X and Y, which is actually showing global position of different points or different nodes or different elements. But apart from the global coordinate system, in Saap, each element also has its own local coordinate system as well. Similarly, for each element, whether they are horizontal member or whether they are vertical member, so they are also this 1, then this 2, and then this 3. Even if you have a area type element, okay, like a slab or like a wall or something like that, so even for those we have also these local axes 1, 2, 3. Even for the joint, the nodes which you have these, for this model you can see we got these 4 nodes. One node is this, one node is this, one node is this. So even for this node we also have those local axes. Okay, so last time I also discussed you can also change the orientation of these local axes as well if you want. Okay, and then we also solve some area elements. We also discuss the meshing of these area elements, and then we also solve some more general multi-story example. Okay. Okay, so last time we are done this with, again, these are the general steps: pre-processing, analysis, and post-processing. So you are already familiar with these steps. Okay. So again, they are actually solving this one typical one-story 3D structure, as you can see here. So this is a real structure which has been represented by these beam, column, line elements, as you can see. Even this wall has been modeled with this braces element. Okay. Again, so all these 3D element has been converted into line element, and where this area 3D element has been converted into 2D area element, as you can see here. Okay, it will be like over this frame. So then they have solved this problem. So I'm not repeating this again. I have already solved this problem. You can see all these steps and you can repeat it. Have you solved this problem? इस problem को आपने solve किया था?
सर वो 3 स्टोरी वाला बिल्डिंग का प्रॉब्लम है, इसको सॉल्व किया था.
ओके, और ये नहीं किया, ये भी आपको दिया था ना मैंने. मतलब ये तो ऑलरेडी सॉल्व है. एज यू कैन सी दे आर टेलिंग यू एवरी स्टेप व्हाट यू नीड टू डू नेक्स्ट स्टेप एंड नेक्स्ट स्टेप इन ईच स्टेप. ठीक है, सो यू कैन गो विद दैट. After defining, you can define the load pattern, load cases, load combination. We are already done with this. We are repeating the same steps of previous lecture as well. Okay, the steps are remain the same, but depend upon the problem, depend upon the example, you must have some different steps as well. But typically these general steps will be always there in every problem. Okay, then you can you can assign supports, and then you can run analysis, and then you can see like those internal forces or shear forces or bending moment or deflection, all these things. So there are 2 ways to visualize these results. Either you can show the diagram, the shear force, bending moment, or deflection diagram, or you can output the result in the form of a report or in the form of some tabulated values. Okay, column, rows, values. Okay. So last time I already also discussed these, how we can output our result in the form of some table form. Then some local axis discussion ki thi, if you remember. So this is a global axis, They are very important, and you can see for each element, for each horizontal or for each vertical element, we have its own local axis. But remember, the local axis changes with the orientation of the members. As you can see, whenever you have a line element, so the longitudinal axis, which is actually the lengthwise axis, as you can see, will be taken as the local axis 1, and perpendicular to this, it can be taken as local axis 2, and then perpendicular to these two is, it will take as the local axis 3. Okay, so if you just make it in term of this horizontal, if you just make it vertical, so again, so for a vertical member, again, the you can, as you can see, this axis will be the local axis 1, the perpendicular will be axis local 3, and the other will be the local axis 3. Okay, so as you can see it here, these for the line element. Similarly, we could also have these for the simple frame, the area element, as well as for the joint as well. Okay, so here they are showing you those local axis 1, 2, 3 orientation. As you can see in Saap, they are also colored by these red color. Red color will show you always the local axis 1. This green color will show you local axis 3, 2, and this blue color will show to you local axis 3. Here you can also see, for example, if this is the longitudinal view, and if I just draw it like this, if this is a section, so now you can see this is local axis 2, which is showing the depth. This is local axis 1, okay, as you can see it here, and the other direction, this direction, this is local axis 3. So now you can see, depend upon these local axis orientation, this 1, this 2, and this local axis 3, you can see you will get that corresponding shear component or moment component, as you can see. So here we are, that you can see this V22, which is actually the major shear, which is along the axis 2, local axis 2. Similarly, the M33, which we normally consider the major moment, you can see it is about M3, local axis 3. You can see this is a local axis 3, and about this local axis 3 we have this M33. Similarly, if you take a moment about 2, it will be moment axis about 2, minor axis. And similarly, if you take the shear in the local axis 1, like this axial load, we call it axial load. Okay, so all these components can be taken from here as well. Okay, depend upon the whether the element is a horizontal, and also depend upon where what is the I section, I end means starting end, and what is the J end, what is the end. Okay, so this is for a horizontal type of member. You could say for a beam type of element. For example, here you can see the local axis orientation for a vertical type of a member. As you can see, again, along the longitudinal direction we have local axis 1, and perpendicular to this we have local axis 2, and then in this direction, in plane into this screen, you can see this is local axis 3. So depend upon this, you can then know your M33 major moment, M22, and V22, and all these components for the moment, as well as for the forces, can be taken out for us for a specific individual member. Okay,
सर
जी बोले.
सर ये एक्सिस में हमें किस तरह पता चलेगा कि ये मतलब टुवर्ड द स्क्रीन है या अवे फ्रॉम द स्क्रीन है, मतलब हम किस तरह, मतलब राइट हैंड रूल या इस तरह कुछ है,
नहीं,
मतलब
राइट हैंड रूल हम
इसमें
यूज करते हैं ना इसके लिए. फॉर दिस स्टेप यूजेस राइट हैंड रूल. For example, if this is a section, as you can see, so if this is, for example, 2, and if it is, for example, 3, ठीक है, this is section view. So this will be the longitudinal view, isn't it? ठीक है, ये longitudinal
Yes, sir.
view. So this axis will be local axis 1 for the member. We are talking about for the member. Okay,
Yes, sir.
this will be local axis 1. This will be this direction. This will be local axis 2, and this direction, this will be local axis 3. So this is how we can tell. We can change the orientation, okay, of this. It's depend upon us how we can actually like represent the global as well as the local axes. We can change the orientation. Instead of this y, I can make it x, or instead of this x, I can make it like y. We can change the orientation of the global axis as well as the local axis of the member. But I am discussing here the default orientation. Normally, when we create any member or any problem in the Saap 2000 software, so this will be the default global axis positions. As you can see, this is x, why this cross shows actually this cross shows actually into the plane of the screen, okay, or into the plane of the paper, ठीक है. Whereas this 1 2 3 actually shows the local axes. अब बात समझिए आप लोगों को.
यस सर.
Okay. So last time इसको हमने डिस्कस भी किया था. Again, as you can see, they are also applicable for the joint and as well as for the joints, ठीक है जी, or any nodes. So for node there will be also local axis 1, local axis 2, and as well as local axis 3. But for joint, whenever you are having a local axis for the joint, it is always like similar to the global axis. For example, if the global axis is this x and this is z, and this is, for example, y. So for the local axis for this joint, the local axis for this joint will be also in the same orientation. This will be along the x, there will be local axis 1, along the z there will be local axis, you could see 3, and along the y there will be local axis, you could say 2. Okay. Okay, so last time we're done with and how we can change the orientation. So again, very easy. You can go to the frame, and from the frame you can go to the local axis or angle orientation. Here you can see, and here you can specify any angle. So depend upon your positive value or depend upon your negative value, it can rotate in the clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. Last time we are done. Similarly, we can change the orientation of a local axis of a particular frame, something like this. For example, last time I discussed with you, instead of this I want it to be, for example, something like this. And similarly, we can also change the orientation of the joint or even for the restraint as well, okay, if you want. So all these sort of changes can be done. So for this you need to select the joint, for example, and then after you need to go to assign, and in the joint and in the local axis, when you click it, you will see this window will pop up, and then you accordingly about which axis. So here you can see the value is given in the rotation about y, okay. So it will actually rotate. This is y, the y is into the plane of the this is x, this is z, and the this will be the y. So it is actually the moment will be about y. So that's why they give you this. And negative and positive is for the to move it, to rotate the joint node or the restraint orientation clockwise or anti-clockwise. So last time I gave this assignment. इसको आप लोगों ने try किया है? You solve this problem. I just ask you just take some random value, some random dimension, for example, and solve this problem. तो इसको आपने किया है?
Yes, sir, we did this.
Okay, I will check all these your assignment. ठीक है?
Yes, sir.
Then display के हमने कहा था you can display these things. ठीक है? Okay, again I give this as an assignment. ठीक है? this assignment में दिए थे, ये भी आपको दिया था जी. ये assignments आप लोगों ने किए हैं जी? ये सारे प्रॉब्लम आप लोगों ने सॉल्व किए हैं सैप में?
Yes, sir, किए हैं सर.
सर आपने कहा था कि ये ना करें फिलहाल.
मैंने ये क्यों कहा था ये ना करें फिलहाल? मैंने तो कहा था ये करें यार. किसने कहा था कि ना करें?
सर आपने कहा था लास्ट लेक्चर की आप रिपोर्ट बना लें, तो हमने उसकी बनाई थी, इसकी नहीं बनाई. नहीं,
ये देखें, वो तो आपने वो भी करने और ये भी करने हैं. ये तो इसमें दरमियान में आपके लिए प्रैक्टिस प्रॉब्लम है ना यार. ये तो आपको मैंने जब हम एक प्रॉब्लम को डिटेल से कर लें तो बाकी तो मैं आपको एज असाइनमेंट या एज प्रैक्टिस प्रॉब्लम दे देता हूँ, सो दैट यू नीड टू डू इट. इसमें ये प्रॉब्लम है, आगे और भी मैंने आपको दिए थे, तो ये आप लोगों ने नहीं किया. ओके, चलें. इन द कमिंग वीक again we will be having an in-lab assessment, और उसी in-lab assessment में I am going to check all your previous assignments, ठीक है, previous question of all the lectures. Is it clear? ये बात clear होगी सबको?
Yes sir.
ठीक है. In the coming class we will take a short lecture, and before that we will be having an in-lab assessment, and in that in-lab assessment I will also check your previous assignment question as well. ठीक है. तो इसमें जो लेक्चर 1 2 जितने भी सारे हमने इस किस्म के आपको मैंने टास्क दिए हैं, इस सब के फाइल्स बनाए, एंड यू आर गोइंग टू शो इट टू मी. ठीक है. Okay. After that we have last time we also discussed those area element as well. ठीक है. Area element molding. So last time I discussed with you in SAP there are different types of object we can use. We can use, for example, we can make a line object, We can make a, for example, a point object. We can make a, for example, an area object. Okay. These are different. In line element, we can draw beam, yeah, like frame element, like tendon element, like cable element. So different types of line element we can have in the SAP 2000 software. Similarly, if you want to look at a point, we have a point object, and for example, for area type elements or objects or structure, we can have this area element. So for this area element, I will discuss again this in very detail in our coming lecture. But just let me just define these different types of shell that we normally use in our SAP 2000. So remember, basically this area type element can be broadly classified into these three types: this membrane, this plate, and then the combination of this membrane and plate is actually a third type, which we called shell. So membrane element means that if you have a area element, if you have a area element something like this. So last time I discussed with you that this area element will be only able to resist the axial loading in both directions. For example, this is one direction and this is other direction. So this will be in plane to the, or इसका मैं एक section ले लूं. For example, this is the section. So the forces will only move in this, for example, in the axial direction. Okay. So these membrane type element have only what? In plane stiffness only. Okay. They can resist the loading like a membrane. If you see like a sheet of a paper, for example, they can resist the loading in the in plane position. But if you apply any loading in out of plane position, something like this, okay, something like this, so it will just directly bend because it will not be having any stiffness to resist the out of plane loading. Okay, ji. For example, if you have such type of a member, then you can model that member using the membrane characteristic or membrane properties. Okay. But for example, we have also another which is called plate, in which what actually happen, it only resists the bending stresses or bending, it is only bending stiffnesses. For example, if I have this slab and if I apply bending, so it will try to bend something like this, for example. So it is like going to resist those bending stresses. But if you apply any other load, any other shear load, for example, or any other axial load, so it will not resist and it will directly move from here to, for example, here. Okay. So this is called so this is called plate behavior. So in plate behavior, we have only out of plane stiffness, where in membrane we have only in plane stiffness. And when we combine these two effects, because in real structure, in real slab structure, we normally get both the axial forces as well as the bending forces. Okay, so for such type of a slab element, we can model it using a shell. Okay, ji. Shell is actually a combination of this membrane as well as plate. In membrane only in plane stiffness, in plate only out of plane stiffness. In shell we have both in plane stiffness as well as out of plane stiffness. Okay, it's simply the combination of membrane and plate. So depend upon the stiffnesses that you consider, we could have different type of area elements. Okay, so normally we use this shell element. Again, in this plate element we have further two types. It could be thin plate or it could be thick plate. Similarly, in shell we have two types. It could be thin shell. Last time we have seen all these when we are actually assigning and modeling that slab element. So if we have two types of shell element. One is called thin shell and the other is called thick shell. Okay. So again, if you have like a beam type element, so again it will be considered as a thick shell. But if you have a narrow slab type element with very small thickness, for example, as compared to the other two dimension, then such element can be considered as a still thin shell. And why shell? Because they are going to resist the axial loading as well as the bending stresses as well. Okay. और thick और thin हम कब करते हैं? जब we also consider when we don't consider the shear deformation in this analysis, then it will be considered as a thin shell. But when you also consider shear deformation, the deformation, if you apply load and this member is going to compress from here to here, for example. So if, for example, your element also has the tendency to be compressed, for example, due to shear loading. So for such type of a area element, you need to consider a thick type plate element or a thick type shell element. Okay, so this is a little bit introduction. Last time when we discussed kiya tha, here they are also discussing all these things here, like
सर
you can see here. जी बोले
सर ये प्लेट का एग्जांपल कोई है?
जी प्लेट का एग्जाम एनी कोई भी फॉर एग्जांपल प्लेट का एग्जांपल इफ यू कैन सी फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यू हैव अ यू कुड से अ वाटर टैंक एक वाटर टैंक हो सर्कुलर वाटर टैंक फॉर एग्जांपल इस तरह का कोई वाटर टैंक है फॉर एग्जांपल लेट मी जस्ट राइट ठीक है so the loading which is actually applied because of this water or any gases whatsoever okay so it is like trying a pure bending type loading to this pipe or whatsoever okay इस तरह का कोई pipe है ठीक है इस तरह का for example and so the stresses that this will develop something like this ठीक है so they will like try to create a pure plate type behavior okay, where you will be having those bending type stresses. But if the thickness is very large, then the shear deformation of the section will also participate. Okay, then you need to consider also that as well. Again, it depends upon you that for a given area element, whether you specify a membrane element or a plate element or a shell element, then because you will know the expected behavior of the area element, that it will behave only as a membrane, means that will only having those in plane forces, in plane stiffness, or it could also be having those it can having those out of plane bending or means out of plane bending stiffnesses, or it could have both bending axial in both direction and as well as bending in both direction. It has bending in both direction, something like this. You can see it here. It has axial in both direction, but no bending, no axial. Here in shell we have both axial, that is in plane stiffness, as well as out of plane stiffness. And this U1, U2, R3 shows the translation in the local axis one direction, means displacement in the local axis 2 direction, and this is the rotation about the local axis 3. So in plane, in membrane, we have these type of displacement and moments. In plate, we have these type of displacement and moment, where in shell we have all of these. You can say all U1, U2, U3, and R1, R2, R3. U1, for example, this is a point, so if it is displaced, so if it displays in the local U1 direction, so we call U1. If it displays in the U3 direction, we call it U3. If it displays in the U2 direction, we call it U3. Simply, and similarly, if it rotate moment, if has those moment about the local axis, for example, 3, local axis is 1, and local axis 2, so you will get those R1, R2, and R3. Okay. Here they are now showing you, as the example, I am just showing this, you can then verify these things. For example, I have these 3 frames and these 3 walls. These are the walls. ये क्या हैं? ये walls हैं. Let me just quickly do this. So these are some wall type elements. Wall 1, wall 2, wall 3. And these are some frame type slabs. So they have defined these 3 type of area element. In the first case, they provide this membrane. In the second case, they provide this plate. And in the third case, they provide this shell type element. And similarly, again, this is for the slab, this is for the wall, this is the membrane, this is a plate, and here we have some shell element. Okay? And just for the comparison, that what happened. And here they have applied, if you see here, they have at the center of this slab, they have applied a point load, vertical point load of here 10 kips. If it is visible to you, is it visible? Nazar aa raha hai? Here also.
Yes, sir.
And here also. Can you see this? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we have here we have also this point load here in this direction. Okay. Can you see this? Just to see a relative comparison that how if we have these loading conditions, then how these 3 types of area element will behave. So if you come here, for example, if you see, for example, the same load we apply in the vertical direction, as you can see, this 10 kips, this 10 kips, and this 10.2 kips actually. So what actually happened? So in case of this first is actually a membrane type of element. So what actually happened when you apply a vertical load? So you already know the membrane can only resist the in-plane shear, the in-plane forces, but cannot resist out-of-plane forces. So what happened when you apply the load at this node at this point? Can you see? So because it don't have any stiffness, bending stiffness in the out-of-plane direction. So what actually happened here? You can see this point, the displacement in the u3 direction. Can you see what is the displacement in the u3 direction? जी कितना है displacement? Can anyone tell me?
सर
जी बताएं मुझे.
इनफाइनाइट होगा सर.
Infinite, it is like in millions meter, for example, because you have apply a loading, but this member cannot resist any out of plane loading. If you apply a load in this direction, for example here in the x direction in plane with the membrane element, so that it will then this membrane element will be able to resist the loading. Okay. Similarly here, if you see the wall, this wall, which is also made of this membrane type element, so when they apply a load on this, something like this in this direction, so here you can see the node has been displaced to about millions displacement theoretically. ठीक है, ये बात समझ आए ना? So this is how this membrane element behave. If you see the second one, which is actually a plate behavior, so this plate behavior is able to resist this out of plane loading. So that's why you cannot see any you could say failure or something like that, but it is actually resisting those loading. And similarly, if you have the shell type element, so it will be having both that axial stiffness as well as those bending stiffness. Okay, and if we talk about thin shell, that we can ignore the shear deformation, but if we are considering the shear deformation, then you will consider thick shell. Okay, for example, if you have very deep foundation or deep footing, something like that. जी ये बात सबको समझ आ गई?
Yes sir.
Is this thing clear? Here you can see this joint, this node has been displaced to here, and this displace, although it is looking very short, but in theoretical it is giving like million value of displacement. Okay, because we have model a membrane area element, and we are applying a out of plane load, but out of plane load cannot be resisted by a membrane element. Okay, here you can see again. Now what I am doing, now they have applied in the second case, now they have applied the same condition, but the loading condition has been changed. Now tell me how the loading has applied. मुझे बताएं. Loading कैसे applied हुआ है?
In plane.
Now the loading is applied on the same joint. Okay, जो same joint था उस पे apply हुआ है. ठीक है, but in the, you would say, in the axial direction. So now if you see the membrane element here, so now it can resist the loading here because it has in-plane stiffness. ठीक है, इस डायरेक्शन में इसमें स्टिफनेस है, बट बिकॉज ऑफ द प्लेट एलिमेंट, जो प्लेट एलिमेंट था, इट हैज बेंडिंग मीन आउट ऑफ प्लेन डिस्प्लेसमेंट को तो ये रेजिस्ट कर सकता है बिकॉज ऑफ द स्टिफनेस, बट इन प्लेन स्टिफनेस को ये रेजिस्ट नहीं कर सकता. दैट्स व्हाई this node has been displaced to again to a million value. Can you see this? Can you see this?
Yes sir.
Whereas in case of a plate element, in case of a shell element, as you can see here, so it can resist both the in-plane as well as out-of-plane forces. Similarly for the wall, if you see here, so this wall, if this is a plate element, the plate element can only resist loading in this direction. Okay, but if you apply in opposite direction loading, so it will just displace to a, because it will not be able to because it don't have any stiffness in this direction. Okay, and don't have any stiffness in the in-plane direction. So this is a simple comparison of these different type of area element, mostly for our building system. For example, if you are modeling a building, a multi-story building, for a building system, for a building slab, we normally consider a shell type element. Okay, shell type element, and if the thickness is small, we consider a thin shell element. Okay, but if you have very deep footing, very deep beam, something like this, for this you can then use a shell thick element. so that it can also be able to model those shear deformation as well. Okay. So this is here they are again discussing the same thing which I have discussed. Again, in the first case we have these vertical loads, and here you can see the bending, the membrane cannot resist it, the plate can resist it, shell can resist it. Again, if I have a lateral load, something like this, TKG, so again the membrane can resist it, but the plate cannot resist it. It can only resist the loading which is in this direction, and the plate can resist it. Okay, and it can give you those values. जी, इसको आप देख लेंगे जी. इज इट क्लियर अ लिटिल बिट? ठीक है, तो ये
Yes, sir.
डिस्कशन यहाँ भी हो रही है. आप देख लें अगेन, shell type element, we could have thick shell or thin shell. Thick shell includes the effects of the transverse shear deformation. ठीक है, as you can see here, this is the thick type plate, a very deep foundation, something like this, for example, something like this. So in order to model this, so the shear deformation will also be considerable in this type of a member. So you need to consider also this as well. For this, you need to then consider a thick shell element. But here, if you see a simple slab element, as you can see, thickness is small as compared to the other two dimension. So this can be considered as a thin plate. Then we have also a third type of a shell element, also a fourth type, which is actually called shell layered or non-linear. For example, if I have a slab type element like composed of different layers of element. For example, as you can see in this figure, I have this concrete. This is like a sandwich panel type element. We have this concrete and then this reinforcement, and in between these two reinforcement, I have this foam. ठीक है जी. So it can be, so the member can be very light, and again it can be very thermal, matlab insulation can give you those insulation things, etc. So in order to model this type of a slab, which has now different layer, so the SAP can also give you an option. You can go, although this is a little bit advanced, but of course you should be having an idea कि अगर layered shell ho, or different layers of the element are there, then we can use shell layer or this non-linear option to model those slab elements. Okay, I'm not going to the detail of this, but just to show you. Here again, if you see again, now you understand that in case of a slab element, in case of a reinforced concrete slab element that we normally construct, if it is like monolithically constructed, for example, so this element, this will be having the in-plane stiffness as well, like this, and also having the out of plane stiffness as well. Okay, so that's why we need to give the dimension for the membrane, because we have selected this shell thin. For example, normally we use this shell thin, and for shell you already know it will be having the membrane behavior as well as the what, as well as the bending behavior, means the membrane and plate. So that's why whenever you check this shell element, you need to give the thickness of the membrane as well as the thickness of the bending. And normally they are same, and they can also be different because of the layer thicknesses. Okay, something like this. So I already discussed this with you again. So just to summarize it again, we can also modify the stiffnesses. Last time we have discussed this thing. I think we have modified the stiffnesses for a frame type of element, but in the similar way we can also modify those different stiffnesses in different direction for the membrane, for the bending, for the shear. We can also modify all these as well. ठीक है, ये again a little bit more discussion, इसको आप फिर आप देख लेंगे. Again, जो discussion मैंने की वो यहाँ भी ये कर रहा है. Again, shell element has two types. Plate, we have this membrane element, which has zero flexure stiffness, and it has only in-plane stiffness only, and zero flexure stiffness. Similar plate has only flexure stiffness, but no in-plane stiffness. It can be two type, thin plate or thick plate. If you consider shear deformation, so it will be thick plate. If you don't consider shear deformation, it will be thin plate. And then again, in shell type element, it will consider both in plane and out of plane. ठीक है, deformation. And again it can be two types, thin shell or thick shell. So this is a little bit information here. They are also discussing this. Here they are discussing the thin and thick shell concept. You can read it. I guess you must also study this from your mechanics. Okay, how they differentiate between this thick and thin shell element. Just for the understanding, I just include these slides here. Okay, again you can see layer shell. Another example of a layer shell can be if you have this for example this rubber pad. As you can see, this is a rubber and then steel, then rubber, then steel, then rubber, then steel. These are those you can see those different type of the energy dissipation devices. They can be used, so which can have different layers. So in order to model these type of a area type element, for example, we can use this layered shell option of the Saap 2000 software. Okay, so this is a little bit introduction about the area element. Last time we discussed this thing, how we can then define this area element. Again, we can define the load, we can draw that. As you can see, they have draw it. This now you can see a 3D view, the thickness as you can see. Okay, again you can see this is a global XY, and we can also be having this local 1 and 2, which is in plane. Both are in plane, and this is local 3. Okay, assigning load, you already know how we can assign load. We can assign area loading or point load we can apply depending upon. And again, a very important step is the meshing. So last time I discussed this with you. In meshing, we actually divide one whole panel into small panels so that it can have better connectivity with the supporting element. For example, if I have a beam here, so if I have more of these connection, more of these divisions, so it will be better connected to the slab, so the under beam. And when this beam is going to deflect, so the slab will also going to deflect with it. And last time I showed these with you as well. Then I give this in as example. ये भी आपको ऐसे assignment में दिया था, इसको आपने किया है जी? ये नहीं किया आप लोगों ने? तो ये तो यहाँ सॉल्व भी है, ठीक है। ये मल्टी स्टोरी बिल्डिंग जी हमने कर लिया था जी। एनी प्रॉब्लम इन दिस प्रॉब्लम इन दिस असाइनमेंट? भी इसमें किसी को कोई प्रॉब्लम था जी? ये भी मैंने आपको एज असाइनमेंट दिया था, इसको किया है? नहीं किया आप लोगों ने?
नो सर।
सर ये 2D में किया सर, 3D में नहीं किया सर।
नहीं तो 3D में क्यों नहीं किया
सर? 3D का लेक्चर तो सर अभी पढ़ा है, और सर आपने सिर्फ 2D तक असाइनमेंट दी थी सर।
नहीं, 3D भी मैंने आपको दी थी ना लास्ट टाइम, हमने ये लेक्चर किया था ना।
नो सर, सर वो तो हमने सर वो क्विजेस किए थे, उसी में डिस्कशन की थी सर।
उसकी लास्ट टाइम हमने ये किया था, हमने ये स्टार्ट किया था। बिफोर दैट, बिफोर द लास्ट वीक इन लैब असेसमेंट वी हैव स्टार्टेड दिस लेक्चर आई थिंक। चले ओके, इस वीक में आप कर लें। ओके
यस सर।
रिपोर्ट आपको क्या है? Again, as you can see here, this is a 3D problem. As you can see, for example, this is a sort of a column, and then this beam and then beam. They are like fixed support here, fixed support here, and fixed support here. So everything is given to you. You can see, but the global XY position is also being changed. Okay, so you can study this one, and then you can see here what they are actually asking from you. Okay. And for this we have a video as well. इस प्रॉब्लम को एक वीडियो में भी सॉल्व किया गया है, ठीक है। So you can either go and watch that video first maybe, or you can directly solve this with using these input data, ठीक है। So this is your home assignment. Next time ये प्रॉब्लम भी मैं देखूंगा। And again, if you feel any, or if you have any problem or any question, उसको भी हम डिस्कस कर लेंगे, ठीक है।
यस सर।
कर लेंगे इसे।
यस सर। सर इसकी रिपोर्ट बना बनाए ना?
नहीं, रिपोर्ट बनाएंगे, लेकिन रिपोर्ट और प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करना ये हर एक प्रॉब्लम के लिए आपने करना है। ओके
यस सर।
ओके सर।
रिपोर्ट बनाने में क्या होता है, रिपोर्ट तो आप बस इसका जो डेटा है, जो स्टेप्स हैं और जो रिजल्ट्स हैं वो आपने शो करने। तो 2-3 पेज के 4 पेज के आप रिपोर्ट नहीं बना सकते एक प्रॉब्लम का।
बना लेंगे सर।
चले बना ले। ओके
ओके सर।
दिस इज आवर असाइनमेंट, ठीक है।
ओके सर।
Okay, so this was all about this lecture number 4 sorry. I hope आप लोगों ने इसको क्या होगा